Please always consult with your physicians prior to making any changes to your treatment plan. Welcome to Living with Scanxiety, the Cancer Podcast, a podcast geared to help you navigate the pediatric cancer world. As a mother of a child who battled a soft tissue sarcoma for over a year, your host, Rosaria Kozar, understands and will help guide you through your journey. She brings the knowledge of experts, families, survivors, and other organizations tied to the pediatric cancer world to your doorstep. Her mission is to inform, support, and promote hope for you and your family.
The only thing in your life guaranteed is right now. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. 30 minutes time is not guaranteed. The only thing guaranteed is right now. So live in this moment and don't worry about what happened 5 minutes ago, and don't worry about what's going to happen in 5 minutes' time. Just worry about what you're doing now.
This is Rosaria, and I am here with Rian Harvey. He is from Dorset, England, and he is a two-time survivor of AML leukemia, which is very different than ALL. So we're going to hear a little bit about his story and his advocacy and how he's moved on with post-traumatic growth. A lot of this is seen on his social media, so you'll have to check that out. So welcome to the show, Rian.
Hi there, how you doing?
I'm doing great, and I think it's wonderful, all the things that you do, and you present all this material online. Can you tell me a little bit about your journey and all the way up to this point where I like to call it post-traumatic growth, because that's what it seems like to me because of everything you're posting. But if it's not that for you, then feel free to change up the wording.
No, definitely. Yeah. No, I think that's the right word for it, really. It's like the sort of the growth after everything. And one of the key messages on my platform is that it doesn't end at discharge, and there's actually a world after cancer that can be really difficult, but also, it's nice to have people, I hope, like myself and other people out there, just sort of guide you in that platform as well, and sort of get to know what life's going to be like afterwards. Like you said, I was diagnosed with leukemia when I was 14 initially. I had just finished my first year at high school, so I don't know what it's like where you are, but over here we've got, in certain pockets of the UK, we've got first school, middle school, and then high school. Which middle schools are dying off, but I won't go into that because it's not a podcast about middle schools. But so we had I finished the first year at high school, so it had been year 9, so I was 14 years old. And I was feeling really ill basically during some holidays, and started off how all the usual cancer stories start in terms of like this happened and this happened, and that's how it started essentially. First thing I noticed was night sweats, went to lightheaded spells, then went on to loss of appetite, which was very odd because I love my food. And then from there things progressed. I was having like panic attacks in the night, and it wasn't until I started to have a problem with my leg that we started to then go and try and find medical attention. This was sort of like 8 weeks after I noticed my first symptom. So I went right through to some holidays, which over here we've got 6 weeks on holiday. It starts at the end of July and finishes at the beginning of September, and that's sort of our time to relax. And I went through that. Wasn't really myself, didn't really see many of my friends, but I was sort of struggling with like my social sort of areas anyway. So I was thinking maybe that's why I'm not seeing friends. I've got the energy to go out and just sort of trying to find my place in the world. And towards the end of the summer holidays, everything started coming to a head. These night sweats turned into panic attacks in the night. I was having night terrors. My leg then sort of started getting a bit sore, felt like I'd sort of pulled a muscle. And I was stretching it out. I remember stretching it out just before I went back to school, right at the end of some holidays, stretching it out, nothing happened. Went to school. First week of school, absolutely fine. The symptoms I've been experiencing during the summer, again, the night sweats, fatigue, sickness, not eating, loss of appetite, they start to sort of come up a little bit while I was at school, but not really much for me to notice about. I'm 14 at the end of the day. Why would you care about feeling a little bit ill? Why would you care about sweating at night? It's just normal. Mm-hmm. And went through my first week of school and came back on a Thursday and said to Mum, I think he needs to get his leg checked out because it's quite sore. I'm struggling to walk, like I'm getting out of breath, going from different place to place just because I'm struggling to get around. My leg was starting to sort of jar into a kind of position. I couldn't sort of extend it fully. So I thought that it's probably worth us going to get it checked by the doctor, just to get it checked over and see. So we went down, booked an appointment to go see our local doctor, went down there on the last Friday of the first week of school. he checked me out, and he agreed to pretty much what I thought. He said, looks like you probably pulled your muscle. Now, I played football or soccer for you guys.
Yes.
And yeah, constant debate. But yeah, I played football, and it was, then I was thinking maybe I've done some training, and this is just a normal injury we get as a teenager. I've worked a little bit too hard and I pulled muscle. And it's gave me some cream to go home for the weekend, and did the classic doctor thing. If it doesn't get any better, come back and we'll see what we can do. So I rubbed this cream in over the weekend. Didn't get any better, hence why I'm on the podcast, obviously. So I was rubbing the cream to the leg. Nothing got better. If anything, got worse. And by the Tuesday the following week, I was off school because I could literally not walk. I was hobbling around, the hunchback of Notre Dame. Like my leg had sort of gone into probably like a 40-degree angle type thing. Really sort of bent. As if I'd be sitting down, and I was just hobbling around backwards, all hunched over, really, really unwell when I think back at it. And got to about the Wednesday or Thursday and went, right, I'm going to have to go back to the doctors now and get checked, because you're just not getting any better. If anything, you're getting worse. I reluctantly agreed. I was like, yeah, that's fine. Let's go to the doctors and see what they say. We'll go on to the doctors on the Thursday night. The following week, they're talking 6 days after a first appointment, to get checked out and just say, look, we need a second opinion, because what you said, obviously, nothing's happened now. And he said to me, I don't think you've broken your leg, but I'm going to send you for an x-ray because you might have chipped a bone. And I was thinking, hang on a minute, mate. Like, I know I'm like not skinny, but I don't run that much. I'm breaking bones in my legs. So I was like, let's calm down a bit. But he sent us for an x-ray. And he basically said, look, tomorrow, go to the local hospital. I've booked you in for an x-ray. Get it seen. We can see if anything's in there. If it's not, we can sort of decide where we go from there. So I think it's a good plan of action. So I go home, sleep the night, had another panic attack that night, woke up in the night sweating, panic attack, all that sort of normal stuff, I suppose, normal stuff for the cancer world. And woke up in the morning and I literally, genuinely felt fine. Really odd. My leg was still in pain, but my symptoms in terms of the sickness, the fatigue, just weren't there. I was back on my food, ate breakfast that morning. Mum came back from work about sort of 11:30, 12 o'clock, took me to the hospital to get an x-ray. And I remember thinking it was really cool because, again, like I love football. I remember thinking about like these players like Wayne Rooney or these David Beckham and thinking, oh, this is really cool. Like I'm getting a scan. I'm going to be like a big time player. Put myself in these big shoes. And had this x-ray and nothing showed up in the x-ray. And we're hobbling out of this x-ray department and Mum says we're going to A&E. And I, as a 14-year-old, obviously argued back and was like, no, I don't want to go to A&E. And she said, yeah, no, we will. And we hobble in there. Mum goes up to the reception desk. I hope we're not wasting your time. They go, no, you're not. Sit down. Look up the clock. 3 hours wait time, because that's what it's like over in the UK, like really long wait times in the A&E. And we were seen within 20 minutes. They put us into a triage room where they checked me out and they sort of went over all of my symptoms. The moment that I mentioned my symptoms to them, they said, I'll be back in a minute, went off. And they came back and said, look, come with us, put us into a room which said pediatric trauma. And I'm not like a medical expert, but I know I've watched enough like hospital programs to know that trauma is a bad thing. It's not a good thing. And got put in this room and had some blood tests taken. And in that 3 hour period that we would have been sat in the waiting room normally, the bloods had come back. Mum had been pulled out the room. Another nurse had come in. Mum then came back 20 minutes later. I know I could tell she'd been crying just in the way she was looking. She held my hand really tightly and said, look, Ryan, don't talk. Now, I talk a lot, as you can see from platforms, and the talks I do as well. I like talking. Hopefully, I'm using for the right thing now. But she held my hand and said, don't talk, just listen to what the doctor's got to say. Held it really tight and looked at it. I watched this doctor walk in that had been treating me, and another one walked in after her. He smelled really strongly of aftershave, so if I ever meet him again, hopefully I don't meet him in a hospital setting, but if I meet him again, I want to know what aftershave it was because it smelled really nice. But he stood at the head of my bed and said, just started explaining to me about bloods and stuff, and said, do you like school? Like, do you like biology? Do you like your bloods? I was like, yeah, I like all that stuff. Like, lied a little about school, didn't really like school, but like biology. And he sort of stood there, and he said, so you know about your white blood cells, you know about your red blood cells, your platelets, you know how they, all these different things to make your body work. He goes, you've had a little look at your bloods and your red blood cells are very low, which means you've got something called anemia. And me and Mum kind of already suspected this. It runs in the family. We're thinking, okay, that's fine. We can deal with this. Get some iron tablets, be okay. And didn't stop there, obviously. He said, and we think you've also got leukemia. And that's when the world just stopped. And it was like that, bang, like train, everything stopped. He carried on speaking, but I don't have a clue what he said. And I'd crutched myself into A&E. I couldn't get myself out of the bed. I was so unwell at this point that I needed to be admitted right there, right then. So I was taken from that room up the children's ward. And over the weekend, I just deteriorated. Because of the way that my leukemia needed to be treated, I needed to be transferred to a specialist hospital, which was an hour and a half away from my home. And so I spent a weekend in that children's ward, my local hospital. And on Sunday, I was transferred to Southampton, which is an hour and a half away, where I then start my treatment. Obviously, the reason we got into A&E was the leg, which wasn't solved yet. We didn't know what that was. It wasn't until we got to Southampton that my consultant came in on the Monday, and she'd taken blood cultures, and she'd sort of had a little look, and she introduced herself to us. And she basically said to me that there was something in my leg. She wasn't too sure what it was. She was pretty sure it was an infection. She was pretty sure it was serious because my temperature was spiking above 40 degrees Celsius a lot, which is about 4 to 5 degrees above what it needs to be. And I was shaking and shivering. I was on all these antibiotics, and I was very, very unwell. And it wasn't until later on that I found out that she pulled mum into a room on that first day and said, look, with all of my knowledge, and bearing the fact that she had been a specialist in leukemia, she retired after I got through my second time being ill. She was a specialist in my form of leukemia. She pulled mum into a room, and with all of her knowledge, like we're talking like 40 years of expertise in the field, she said, there's a very, very high chance your son's not going to make it through this week because of how badly ill he is in the first week of being diagnosed, which is a big, spanner into the works as well. Then became like this debate between the surgeons and my consultant. My consultant needed them to go in and check the leg out and sort the leg out because she couldn't start chemotherapy until that was fixed because there was an infection there. And if she did, it would just kill me. The surgeons didn't want to go in blinded. They didn't know what it was. They didn't want to understand. They didn't want to go and cutting things up and finding out what things were. By the Thursday of that week, they'd come to a conclusion between themselves that they're going to go in blinded and they're going to come out with either the best case scenario or the worst case scenario, and the one in the middle. So the worst case scenario is I wouldn't have made it through the operation. The best case scenario was that I was going to come out with both my legs and they would have solved the problem. And the middle scenario, which is what they were thinking was going to happen, is I was going to come out with one leg and then have to cut a leg off. I went down to the operating theatre. It was a 4-hour operation. I can't begin to think what my parents were like, sat up in the room, not knowing what they're going to see when the sun comes back up. Luckily, they managed to do the best scenario, and I kept my leg. I'm very thankful for that. They cleared the infection out, sent it off to be checked out and everything. Obviously, took the culture and stuff as well. Left the wound open for it to drain. What had happened is the infection had eaten away at my hamstring and turned to like black mush. So I had half a hamstring in there, and the rest was just like fluid. They cleared all that out. It was really bad. Yeah, they hadn't really seen anything that bad with that infection. It was something called a Staph aureus infection. And then I had to go back down for an operation the next day to have it all sealed up and cleaned out. What had happened is that infection had basically taken control over the week. And my consultant was lucky that said to me, we're lucky we did do the operation at the time, because what she found from the cultures is that actually that developed then into blood poisoning as well. So had they not gone into the operation, she said that blood poisoning, if it went into your torso, she's like, you would have just been gone. Like, there would have been nothing we could have done. So I was thankful for that. And it was a busy first week. And then started my 6-month chemotherapy from there. And I had to learn to walk again because my operation obviously was playing with tendons and stuff. So I had to learn to straighten my leg again. My consultant basically said to me that she wasn't sure I was going to walk properly again, but I saw that as a challenge. And I was like, no, we're going to get physiotherapy. We're going to get this done. So I was very lucky to get the physiotherapy and work through that and actually get back to playing football again. 6 months of chemotherapy, Christmas in hospital, it flew by, which is really odd. I think people that haven't been through it, they always think like this is going to be really long, but it flies by, which is the weirdest thing to say in these situations because it is a tough time, but you're so busy in hospital. It's like having a full-time job, isn't it? It's like there's constantly something going on. It's just goes, it flies. So 6 months flew by and I had Christmas in hospital and I got better. And by January, February time, I was out of hospital and it was like, go get back on with your life again, which is great. And then obviously the second part of the story was a year later, after a year of being fine. I started to notice symptoms again and I didn't tell anybody because I was 15 years old and I was terrified of what that meant. And it was a Christmas after I'd been discharged. I started to notice things. It was like nosebleeds again, night sweats again, fatigue, paleness, going off my food. And I was thinking, oh God, here we go. Like, this is going to happen again, isn't it? And I was terrified and I didn't tell anybody. For 3 months, I didn't tell anybody. I kept it to myself. I didn't tell mum. went to doctor appointments, and they got to the point there, because I hated blood tests. They weren't doing blood tests routinely. They'd just do one if they'd go off the basis that if I was feeling unwell, they'd do one. I didn't tell them I felt unwell, and every time they checked me out, I was like, no, I feel fine, great, yeah, like loads of energy and all good, and just lying to the medical professionals, which was the wrong thing to do. 3 months passed, and we had my 1 year in remission party, which we haven't done since. And basically went for a meal, and everyone's like doing speeches and stuff like, oh, congratulations, we've all done really well, we've got out of this, it's family, friends there, it was really lovely. And I was just sat at the table feeling like an absolute fraud, because I was like, I'm not 1 year in remission, there's something going on here. I think one part of me, the tiny little part of me, was going, oh, maybe it's just going to pass, as all teenagers do. I ignore the problem and it'll go away. But it wasn't going to pass. Obviously, this wasn't going to go away. The next morning after that remission party, I woke up in the morning and I had a blood clot in my mouth. I got rid of it, spat it out, and then had a lymph node on my neck that was swollen up to the size of a golf ball. By that point, I couldn't physically hide that I'd probably relapsed. I walked into the kitchen crying to mum. She went, look, it can be fine. Like, it might not happen how it's supposed to happen. This might be okay. I said, no, he's got a blood test. Got a blood test that day. Got called up went down for lunch with my dad after the blood test. Got called back up to the room where they had the results. I walked into the room, looked at the consultant, and before he said anything, said, I know. And he's like, yeah, it is what you think it is. It's come back. I was allowed to go home that night and sort of tell my siblings. I wanted to really take ownership over this time. Like, I really wanted to sort of like own my cancer. I told my siblings, I told my grandparents, told my dad, because I've got a stepdad and a full sort of blood-related dad. I told my dad as well, because I just wanted to have that ownership over it. And then the next day I was up to Southampton again. It was like going home. It was like being back somewhere that I was familiar with, and the nurses sort of welcomed you with open arms, and the doctor sort of welcomed you with open arms. And unfortunately, they were sort of, because of the way that my cancer had sort of worked with its genes and all the specific tests they'd done, there was a high likelihood that I was going to relapse at some point. They hadn't told me that. Mum knew. I didn't know for obvious reasons, because I was quite young still. I think I was quite happy I didn't know, because I would have been worrying about it all the time. And basically my consultant sort of sat me down and said, look, we're going to put you through 2 months of chemotherapy, which is 2 rounds. We're going to try and get back into remission. And if we can, we're going to then have to find you a stem cell transplant, which is going to have to be unrelated, because you've got no full siblings. So we're going to have to go onto the register, which is the anti-nodal register over here, or the NHS or DKMS, there's a couple of them. And we're going to go onto the register and try and find someone that's a match for you to donate their stem cells to save life. She said to me basically right there in the room, because I was 15, and she was sort of she was a very to the point lady. And she just, I think at that point, she's like, look, I want you to take some more ownership of this situation. So I'm going to be straight with you and tell you how things are. And she said to me, if we can't find you a transplant, then there's nothing we can do. That would be that. There's not a lot we can do from there. We can trial things, but there's nothing really we can do that's going to be a definite cure. So that anxious sort of wait then started for trying to find a stem cell transplant. I think we waited 45 days, which seems very, very short in terms of how long a lot of people wait. But those 45 days felt like a lifetime, because we were just waiting and waiting and waiting. Mum was getting checked, dad was getting checked. They said, you probably won't be a match, but we can check if you want to. So they did, just in case. And then, after 45 days, got the news that they'd found a donor who was 10 out of 10 match for me. A young male who was willing to donate stem cells. And then a few days later, we found out there was another person they'd found, which was a 10 out of 10 female that they'd found, which was like unheard of. And we were so lucky to find that. I finished my 2 months of chemotherapy. I was in remission. I got 13 weeks off, and then went on to my sort of conditioning for a transplant, which was then, that was done in London, because that was the closest hospital that could do that transplant, because it's quite specific. So I was 3 hours away from home. Went out to London at the end of June, after a bit of a problem with a line, which I'll go into later. Basically, a line went wrong and almost died, but it's one of those things. Went out for my conditioning for my transplant, and had 11 days of the big guns of chemotherapy, as they call it. And then my transplant on the 1st of July 2015, which would have incidentally been my prom day, but I didn't have prom. I swapped it for a transplant instead. And then 6 weeks in hospital, and then began the long sort of climb to where I am now, in terms of sort of getting over cancer and that life after cancer balance, in terms of trying to figure out, what do you do when you're sort of left to get on with it, because you've been under the medical team's supervision for so long, and they're like, well, go and live your life. And you're like, okay, how do we do that? What what do we do now? And that's what's been difficult. And that's why I started the page that I do now. That's why I'm writing a book as well. And I've started writing the book and doing the talks, is to just try and help people, because I feel like a lot of the time the support's there, but it's not there. If that makes sense. It's kind of there, but it's not. And that's understandable, because these teams are very limited, I think, in the members they've got, the staff members they've got in the oncology wards. It's very small. They've got to be very careful of them where they sort of bring that niche. And I suppose that's what I try to do. I sort of try to remind people that although life after cancer is complicated and it's very scary, there's a lot of good things you can do with it. Because let me tell you, when you're losing an interview with an employer and you tell them you've had cancer, you've got them like that. Or if you just drop in your CV, I've had cancer, they want to give you an interview because they want to find out about your story.
You have this huge story, and my son, unfortunately, had to lose his leg. So I'm so happy that you came out of that surgery the way that you did. And I can tell you as a parent, it is very nerve-wracking sitting out there just waiting. I can not imagine being your parents in this situation, your mom finding out the way that she did in the emergency room. And how did that affect you? Because it was like you didn't really want to tell them the second time around. How could you tell a caregiver out there that's listening to this how to better to support their child?
Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear about your son first as well. So I'm sorry about that. But with that, supporting a child that goes through it, and I say this to everyone, I've just done a bit of work with the Teenage Cancer Trust in terms of helping friends, not caregivers, but friends understand cancer. And I think it's normality. That's the thing. It's trying to make the situation normal as possible. So one thing my mum did for me, which really supported me and really helped me, was the moment we went to hospital, she made the hospital room a bedroom. It wasn't a hospital room. So she decorated it. We were in at Christmas. She put a Christmas tree up. She just made it as hope, put a throw over the bed, get a duvet. Take number one rule, take your duvet to hospital. But get a throw over the bed. And that makes that situation just more normal. It's an insane situation that you're thrown into, and anybody in that situation will understand. It's like, what do I do? Like, what do I do in this situation? I've never been this. I'm not prepared to be in this situation. We prepare for a lot of things in life. No one prepares for that. And
no one does.
Yeah, you don't think about it. So what do I do? And the answer in my head is you make it familiar, and that's by turning things into a bedroom. One thing as well which helped me was make sure my meal routine was similar to what we had at home. So when mum was first tuned, we went off the hospital meals in the end, and we started cooking our own in the hospital kitchen that we had on the ward. But initially, when she was choosing my meals for the hospital, she was choosing similar meals that I have at home. And it was these small little tiny tweaks, which I wouldn't have thought of, but mum did, that made me feel more comfortable in my environment. And I never saw mum cry after. I didn't really see her cry when I was diagnosed. I could tell she'd been crying, but I never really saw her cry after that. And the strength, I think, sort of passed on to me as well. And I think it's just sort of, really trying to make the situation as normal and familiar as possibly in an abnormal situation, which sounds odd. Crack a joke if you can, make it to bedroom, get some pictures up on the wall, understand you're going to be there for a while, and just accept that. Accepting it, I think, is the hardest thing to do. But once you accept the situation that you find yourself in anything in life, not just cancer, anything in life, the moment you accept the situation you're in, you can get your feet on the ground and start dealing with it a lot easier.
And you have a saying that you said on your social media about living now, you can't wait. I don't know the exact saying. So can you remind me of that, if you remember?
Yes, I always say the only thing in your life guaranteed is right now. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. 30 minutes time is not guaranteed. The only thing guaranteed is right now. So live in this moment and don't worry about what happened 5 minutes ago, and don't worry about what's going to happen in 5 minutes time. Just worry about what you're doing now, and everything becomes so much more simple. And you see all these people as well in these situations, or these big entrepreneurs and people that are motivational speakers and stuff, and they're like, how do you do it? And you notice a lot of them, they don't worry about things. They're very simplistic. They bring their life down to as much as they can. And one thing I think that I understood through cancer, a lot of control gets taken away from you. You everything that you normally do and you normally control it, when I go to bed, when I wake up, when I'm going to go outside, is taken away from you because you can't go outside because you're attached to chemotherapy. You've got you can go outside at 3 till 4 in the afternoon. Well, it's raining. Well, tough luck. You can't go outside then. But that's you get these weird little boundaries. And I think I found when that was I kicked and screamed to start off with, and I want all my control back. And then when that started getting taken away from me, and I started finding out my life was actually very simple now, my decision making was very tiny. I have to make many decisions in a day. I started to enjoy the finer things in life, which was spending time with mum. I spent a lot of time gaming, a lot of time watching films, and then I got into reading and stuff as well. And I think that came with accepting of the situation that I was in and understanding that I can't change this stuff. And if I stress over it, I'm not going to help myself. There's a big wake-up call I had actually when I was in hospital, when I was kicking off first month. This is completely off. Well, it's kind of on track, but I was kicking off big time. Basically, I'd taken some potassium tablets. Anyone who's taking potassium tablets, they're literally like horse tablets, like the type of tablet you force down a horse's throat for them to get better. Massive. Yeah, and I hate tablets anyway, but I'd take 8 of these things. My potassium was really low, and the alternative was 6 syringes of this fizzy purple liquid, which tasted disgusting because they don't think about the taste. So they went medicines. I used to kick off so much. I was like, why do they not think about what these things taste like? So they're just pumping them out into the system. But these potassium tablets, I'm taking them and knocking them back. And I think I was about 4 in, and I was doing really well. And I threw up because it got caught in the back of my throat, and I threw up everywhere. And I just kicked off big time. It was like a proper trigger for me. I was like, why me? Why am I going through cancer? What about the people in jail? People that have done bad things in life. I've never done anything. Why am I going through this? And the nurse kind of grabbed me and gave me a hard truth. And she said, you are in the wrong place to say that. And I didn't expect it because I was like, you're a nurse. You're supposed to give me oh, you're going to be okay. You'll be fine. But what she meant was and she went into this, is the fact that I was in the cancer ward for children. She was like, you can't say why me, because there's 12 other children out there on the ward right now who are going through what you're going through, and some of them got the best situation going on as well. There's then 300 other patients as well that aren't inpatients, and more kids are going to come in this week that are going to get diagnosed with it. So you're not in the right situation to say why me, why now. And that's when I realized I wasn't on my own in the situation as well. And I think podcasts like this as well, with your podcast, it helps people understand they're not on their own in the situation they find themselves in. And that then helps that person to be like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And if I don't know the answer, I can ask that person. And I think, again, that comes again with a little sort of tip is as a caregiver and a parent, I would say communicate with the other parents and caregivers on the ward, because you'll probably find one. And I know we found a few who'd been there for a while, and they know and we became that eventually, one of these people. And they know the little tricks, the little bits and bobs for the ward. They know how to get things, you know what to do in these situations. It's like when you give birth to a child, I suppose, the first time. I've never had a baby, but I know from experience, everyone's like, well, what do I do? How does this work? I don't know. No one's ready for it. And you ask other parents for advice on what did you do when this happened? And that's what I think in hospital, do the same thing. Apply that same sort of metric to that as well.
And it seems like you want to raise awareness here even further, because you're going into this, writing a book, you're doing the stuff online, and you're coming on here, sharing your story, being really vulnerable. I appreciate that. Is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of post-traumatic growth? Because you're doing all those things now, but before, when you got out and you were lost, did you experience depression, and how long did that last, and how did you switch gears into I'm going to help other people?
So yeah, absolutely. I went through everything really. I suppose when I finished my transplant, I had to have 100 days where I was literally my life evolved around medical appointments and taking medicine, and I was taking stupid amounts of medicine. And during that period, I was really depressed, and I don't think I noticed it until later on. I realized I was in a really bad place, but I was literally thinking, what's the point? Why am I here? I've had a second shot of life. I literally didn't care. I was like, what's the point in my life right now? Because I'm just literally wake up in the morning, taking 8 tablets, go and wait until 12 o'clock, taking 8 more tablets, wait until 5 o'clock, taking 8 more tablets, going to bed. On a Thursday, I'll go to Southampton and have a blood test. On a Friday, I'll do the same. Then it just starts again, the same cycle. And I struggled with that because it's just same cycle. And it wasn't until later on I realized that I was really, really in a bad place. I didn't ask for help because I never really did. I was always a person saying, I'm fine, I'm getting on okay. I don't really tell anybody. Opening up is a big thing, I think. And that's something that I'll go on to in a minute, but that's how I got to where I am. Then came the sort of denial stage. about a year or two later. I didn't want to be the kid who had cancer. So I sort of shut that kid out and put this little box of cancer at the back of my head and thought, let's not talk about that. I think it never happened. I was very cagey about it. And I sort of spoke about it as if I'd been in prison. Like I would never mention it. Like if someone asked me about cancer, I'd be like someone was like, did you have cancer? I'd be like, well, kind of, yeah. I mean, I did a little bit, yeah. And it's like, you're very cagey about the situation. Like, why was I doing that? Like, it's an illness. Like, you don't go, did you have a stomach bug? You don't go, I don't know. Like, you just say, yeah, I had a stomach bug. So I don't know why I was being cagey about it. But yeah, I hated it. And I hated the fact that I'd been put in that situation. I was still frustrated with whatever put me in that situation. Obviously, it was just, luck of the draw, unfortunately, that I'd been put into that situation. I wanted to find someone to blame. And I shut it out. I remember going to these, it's so sad and pathetic in some ways. And I'd go to these residential trips for cancer patients, and I'd go there, and in my head I'd be like, no, I'm different to these guys. And that's really bad, because I just wasn't accepting the situation I was in. I'm the same as them all, and we'd all been through something similar. And actually, if I needed anybody, I needed all of them, because they all understood me more than anybody else. And this went on for 5 years, like a long time. And I didn't ever accept it. And I remember deleting my pictures from social media if you bold, and I would never talk about it. I'd never mention it. If I had a job interview, I'd try and hide it as much as I could. People would ask me about it, and I'd sort of have like a really quick conversation with them, then never go into detail with them about what happened. I remember I moved to Scotland. The first place I moved out to Scotland in Edinburgh. I remember moving up there. And before I moved up there, I was saying to myself, this is a clean slate, Brian. We're not going to go up there and talk about cancer. We're not going to mention it. It didn't happen. This is a clean slate. And I like, how can you shut that out of your life? Like, it's 3 years of your life. You can't just shut that out there. And actually, a lot of what happened has made me who I am. And it wasn't until the coronavirus pandemic kicked off that I started to face this. And it was literally last year when it all kicked off. We put into lockdown in the UK, told to go home and stay at home, don't work, And I was like, right, what do I do? And the weather was glorious in the UK for like the first time in a million years. Never nice over here. It's usually raining. So I was like, I need to get out. So I went walking. And the first thing I did, I put a podcast. I listened to podcasts, and I was listening to people that had been through adverse situations in their life. TED Talks, a guy called Ross Edgley, and all these different people that had been through different things in their life. And I was listening to it, and I was thinking, what this person is doing is they're turning their story into something that's motivating them to do something, to make a change in either their lifestyle or somebody else's lifestyle. And I was thinking about it. And then my friend decided he wanted to do a podcast and said, do you want to come on and talk about your cancer? And I was like, yeah, okay, I will. I went on. And for the first time in 5 years, I explained my story from the very start to the very finish on the podcast. The podcast episode is about an hour and a half. It's ridiculous. But I explained it from the first day of the symptoms to basically the end of the transplant and getting to where I was. And I came home and I sort of sat down on the sofa, and my partner said to me, she's like, how was that? And I was just like, I'm exhausted. Like, I am mentally exhausted from that. But I feel really good because I got it off my chest. And then from there, I thought, right, I want to use this. I want to do something with it. And I decided to do a charity challenge to give back to the charity, because I've never done any charity as well. I was thinking, I've done a little bit of charity before then, but I'd never done anything to give back to the charity to save my life. I was thinking, right, I need to do something. I need to do something now, like with this. I need to keep some momentum going and really use it as a force for good. And I thought, right, I'm going to do a bike ride. Never cycled in my life, but I'm going to do a bike ride. I know how to ride a bike, but I've never like done road cycling, like endurance stuff. And I was like, cool, I'm going to do a bike ride. I'm going to cycle the distance from my flat to the hospital. And I put it on Facebook because I'm going to do a bike ride. Cycle from the distance from my flat to the hospital and back. Hadn't actually checked the distances out, but I put it on Facebook. It was out there. I checked the distances out, and I was like, okay, this is quite long. We're talking 264 miles. So it was quite a long distance. So I was like, okay, we've got to manage this carefully, because I'm not a Bradley Wiggins or Chris Hoy or whatever. So Chris Hoy, we've got to really manage this out. So I thought, right, I'll do it every couple of days. I'll try and do it in under a week, because that's a good amount of time to do it in under a week. I've got to work still. I'm not booking time off work. I've still got to do stuff. Let's do it in under a week. So over the summer last year, I cycled that 264 miles. But I did it around Dorset, where I live, because I couldn't cycle to London because of COVID. And sort of crossing counties and stuff. So cycle around Dorset, which is lovely, because Dorset's a really nice county, and got to sort of see the different scenic stuff like that. And while cycling, I was still thinking about what cancer has sort of taught me and meant to me and everything as well. And we raised over £3,500 for charity from it, which was amazing, and I was blown away by that, and it felt really good. And we gave to charity, and actually when I gave it, like, we gave the money to charity and stuff, they said, don't feel you have to, but do you want to come and do a talk about your experiences with us for our conference for the universities that we speak to? Sort of thought about it, and I was like, yeah, I'll give it a go. I like talking. I was always into like drama and stuff. Like when I was at school, I've always been quite out there in terms of putting myself out on the stage, and yeah, I'll give it a go. And I sort of did a talk with Anthony Nolan, and then they said afterwards, their CEO was listening and messaged me and said that's literally one of the best patient advocate stories we've heard in a while. Like they're all incredible, the ones we hear, but you just seem to flow very naturally. And I was like, cool, let's do some more. And just sort of started working with Anthony Nolan more. And then from there, I spoke to one of my friends, and one of my friends has got a stoma bag, and he's a big advocate for stomas on social media and stuff. And I was like, look, I think I've got something here that I can support people, and I can help people do what, get through a tough time and be a person that I needed when I was ill. What do I do? And he's basically, he's massive. He's got like 1 million followers. Like he's really good at what he does. And he went, go for it. He said, just go for it. He said, I won't tell you what to do because it needs to become your own thing, but just go and try it out, and I'll give you tips if I see things. So I did, and I just started the Instagram page and got loads of following and from people and the right people as well. And it was really nice to sort of build this community of people. And then more people would come to me for questions and asking me things. And more charities were asking to do work with me. And then Anthony Nolan asked me to do the World Cancer Day talk and everything like that. And all this stuff started coming. And I was thinking, what I've done in my head here over this 5-year period is I've gone from being depressed about having cancer to being in denial about having cancer to now actually accepting the fact it happened and going, okay, that's happened, nothing I can do about it, but using it to help people see it the way I do. I do a talk for some charities now called Empowered by Cancer, which sounds like a really weird title, but it's about using the lessons it's given you, because I notice it from anybody who's been through cancer, whether it's them or it's their child or it's their mum, their dad, they've got this zest for life that a lot of people don't get till it's sort of too late to use. And I want to help people like unlock that zest and be like, you've been through a really tough time, but let's help you use this and do something incredible with it. And like one of the parts of the talk that I do is we talk about I call it six things of cancer. And basically it's 3 things cancer took from you. And then you write it down on a piece of paper and you crumple it up. You have to crumple it up. You're supposed to burn it, but I don't want people like setting fire to paper. So you crumple up, put it in the bin, get rid of it, it's gone. And then write down 3 things you can take back from cancer. And that's your 3 things that you focus on, because it's 3 things that cancer have taught you. And then from there, I was like, right, I want to write a book about my experiences as well, and sort of like write about little tips and bits that have taught me about myself and how I can sort of work on that as well. So that's, I suppose, how I've got to where I am, which is, I realize it's quite a long journey. And just talking about that.
No, that's great. In order for me to find myself and to become an advocate, it actually took 5 years as well. So yeah. I'm not surprised. Maybe that's the going mark.
Yeah.
But I dabbled in so many things, and I said, this isn't for me. This isn't for me. And then finally I said, I need to help other people. I can't unsee the childhood cancer world. I can't unhear your child has cancer. So It seems to have worked on your end in terms of being diagnosed kind of similarly, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's the same thing. Yeah, it's just, that's how it's worked. I think, like you say, it's like, I want to help people, and same with you, like you want to help people and support people, because we know what it's like in that situation. And we're like, the one thing, I think that's what helps actually with people like me and you, and the fact that we know that, and we can then support people in that sense, because we know what they need to hear, we know what they want to hear, we know what they might not necessarily want to hear, but they need to hear, and we know how to deliver that information to them. And I think that's something important. Human beings learn off experience. If not been through it, they need to hear someone that has been through it to then learn off that experience.
Yeah. And before we wrap up, do you have anything that you want to add?
No, I think it's just, look, it's a whirlwind life after cancer, and it's different for everyone. And I'm hoping that with the stuff that I do, it's not going to be as long-winded for some people as it was for me, and that people can actually start seeing that it's not something to be ashamed of, cancer, and it shouldn't ever be found like something to be ashamed of. You didn't put yourself in a situation, it happened, but let's find a way to use that situation to do something incredible with it, because you've got a gift, and you've got a zest for life that can then be combined together to really do something powerful in the world with it.
That's extremely well put. I like that. Oh, I want to jump to something. Why didn't you tell anybody anything? And how could a parent, I don't know, dissect that, I guess? How do you think your mom could have recognized that? Or could she have? Were you that good at hiding it?
I think mum sort of knew something was up, but not like that it was what it was. A few of my friends were picking up the fact that I was pale and I was like snapping back at them. But it's difficult because it relies on honesty. And it wasn't me like not trusting mum. It was just me being terrified of like, I don't want to go through this again. I knew I had to, but I was just terrified. I was trying to delay it as much as I could. And I put myself in an adverse situation to the fact that when I did, like went into hospital and had a blood take, like these bloods are like the lowest that I've ever really seen. So they were quite low. But from a caregiver, I suppose just about like monitoring them, but not too closely that you're like obviously monitoring them. Like don't go into their room, like how you feeling today? Because that's just going to wind them up. But like go in there and just like chat to them and just see how they're feeling on a day-to-day basis. If you notice anything wrong, then you need to help. I think especially past a certain age, like when I was 15, I needed to be the one to make that decision. I think at that point, teenagers want that sort of wingspan, I suppose. You need to give them that wingspan and allow them to be like semi-independent, but still have a bit of a sort of like wing around them and arm around them. Help them make the decision to go and get checked out if they think something's up, but allow them to be the one that makes that decision. Because I can tell you from a teenage perspective, you're more likely to do it if you think you're the one that made the decision.
So yes, it's important to give teenagers that role. How old are you now?
So I'm 22 now. I think about that. That's bad.
So yeah, that gives you a lot of perspective on where you were. I always end on a positive note, asking some questions. They're kind of silly, but I think they're fun at the same time. So are you ready?
Let's go for it.
Okay, would you rather read minds or tell the future?
Tell the future.
Tell the future. All right. If you had to pick a song out that represented your life right now, it would be the song.
Oh, I like Higher Power by Coldplay.
Oh, Coldplay. They're a good band. I like them.
Yeah. I've seen them live a few times.
Oh, cool. And what is your favorite activity that clears your mind?
Since starting paddleboarding on my Instagram, honestly, incredible. I play football, obviously, but paddleboarding, you get on the sea and it's just calm and quiet and all your stresses just go. That's my favorite thing to do.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time.
No, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to Living with Scanxiety. Please subscribe to hear more informative discussions like today's.